Good, good, good. Batsman got it. The beaten man, yes, he has. He's put it inside now, Drake. Oh, what a glorious chance. He's certain goal. Yes, Drake scores a magnificent goal.
Thousands of people thrilled to the sound of Arsenal scoring goals in the 1930s. Football had become a mass spectator sport, and the Arsenal a household name.
Final whistle goes, and Arsenal have won the cup this year by 1-0.
I mean, everybody in the country held Arsenal in awe in those days. Other fellow professionals of other clubs, when they played Arsenal, they knew they were up against something. And to fit in with people like this was magic for me.
Tom Parker leads the Arsenal and Roy Goodall leads Huddersfield Town out onto the pitch at Wembley for the cup final on April the 26th, 1930. The teams, who were introduced to His Majesty King George V before the game, had shared the same manager, Herbert Chapman, who in the early 1920s had managed Huddersfield Town and then had moved in 1925 to the Arsenal Football Club at Highbury. He transformed the Arsenal into the leading club in the south of England and began to turn football from a predominantly northern working-class pastime to a national entertainment. In 1930, sound newsreels covered the cup final for the first time. But there was no commentator, and the cameras rarely captured the actual scoring of goals. Captions were used to describe the progress of the game. The magnificent Wembley Stadium had been the venue for cup finals since 1923, but provisions for the managers' and trainers' comforts were somewhat sparse. Herbert Chapman and his trainer, Tom Whittaker, sat on Bentwood side chairs beside the touchline. While above them, the Graf Zeppelin made a surprise appearance, and the capacity crowd of 120,000 briefly turned their attention from the game, which Arsenal won, to the enormous airship which dipped in salute and then moved slowly away.
Hardly say how pleased I am we have won the cup this afternoon. I'm very proud of the fact that the Arsenal's been successful in bringing the cup south once again.
Arsenal had won the cup for the first time and were set on an extraordinary decade of success in which the players became folk heroes. In 1930, their senior professional was Tom Parker, who was to captain Arsenal for 2 more years and had been signed by Herbert Chapman in 1926.
Played right full back. And the second year I was there, he made me captain. I followed Charlie Buchan. Charlie Buchan was captain, and I was the second one Herbert Chapman signed on in those days.
He was, without any doubt, the greatest manager of all time, because he lifted league football to professional level. He made the game a great entertainment industry. He knew tactics backwards and forwards. He got a great air for publicity. And in addition, he managed to persuade the players to lift themselves on behalf of the club. He said any idea that was in the club, even by the ground staff boys, he would accept if it was a good one. And one of the things he negotiated was changing the name of the underground station, which is bang opposite the North Bank, from Gillespie Road, as it was in those days, to Arsenal. And this wasn't an easy job because it meant millions of tickets had to be changed and station names had to be changed. The maps of the underground system had to be changed as well. And it took a lot of arguing to get this done. And that was just one of the things he did. I mean, his other flair for publicity was he advocated floodlighting. He put numbers on the backs of the players and played a match and persuaded Chelsea to do the same and was immediately given the rap by the Football League. He advocated artificial pitches. All these ideas were 15, 20 years before their time.
Here's Mr. Herbert Chapman, the famous manager, with his lads at Highbury. And now I'm going to ask him to introduce them to you. Mr. Chapman?
I must apologise this morning. I'm so husky, I can scarcely speak. But my deputy, old Tom Whittaker, will perform. Now, Tom, do your stuff.
All right. On my right, this is Boy Baston. Plays outside left. Alec James, next. Wee Alec is called. Plays inside left. Jack Lambert, our smiling centre forward. Bob Jan, a Welsh international left half. Herbert Roberts, our tall centre half. Little Charlie Jones, another Welsh international. Frank Moss, our goalkeeper. Lancashire lad. David Jack, our inside right. Joe Hume, our flying outside right. And the popular captain, Tom Parker. He's not so old as he looks, by the way.
Mr. Chapman's activities attracted publicity, but the press did not interfere with the casual way in which he tried to sign top players for the Arsenal.
Fine. Yep.
I was invited, or rather asked, to go and meet the captain chairman at Forest Gate at 7:30 one evening. And when I turned up there, I didn't know anything about what he wanted, and he never told me until a Mr. Chapman arrived and introduced me and who he was, Arsenal Football Club. That didn't mean anything very much to me at that time. I was a West Ham fan. And we just went along to the local Lions tea shop, have a cup of tea or coffee, whatever it was, and over there, it was there that Mr. Chapman asked me to sign amateur forms for the club.
George Mayle started as an amateur, like many footballers did in the 1930s. And when he first signed professional papers, the club, as was normal then, only paid him the minimum wage, a tiny proportion of their large gate receipts.
The minimum wage in those days for a professional football league professional player was £4 a week. The maximum was 8, plus any little bits of bonus you might get for winning or losing a match or drawing.
In 1933, I was taken to Highbury by Mr. Kay, my manager at Southampton. We went to see the Arsenal Rangers game, and after the game, went into Mr. Herbert Chapman's office. Absolutely, the room was splendor, trophies all around. And I met this wonderful man, and he had words of encouragement for me. And shortly afterwards, I was transferred to the Arsenal, but unfortunately, it wasn't Mr. Herbert Chapman that signed me, it was Mr. George Allison. And what had happened was that football's tragedy, Mr. Herbert Chapman passed away after a short illness, and that was football's tragic loss.
He had been up north and came back and was feeling chilly with a cold, but he would watch the schoolboys' game and came home, and he really had got a bad cold. And it was all, you know, I must have a hot bath, and everybody was running around in circles, and this was normal. But he went to bed, and it obviously was a very bad cold. And the club doctor came out to see Dad and was very kind, very good. And, you know, but couldn't save him. Before the funeral, a week after my father died, we had all the players coming up to the house, and it was very upsetting, really, because big chaps like Herbie Robertson were just sobbing, crying. And they all came, you know, to the house to see him before the funeral, and then but there were such crowds and people standing up on houses all round and things, and the flowers were marvellous. They'd hung them up on trees all around the churchyard, and the ground was covered with them. Some beautiful flowers from abroad.
Well, Arsenal won the championship, or brought the championship to the south, more than perhaps the towns are better than just Arsenal winning the championship, in the 1930 to 31, I think it was. And then the following season, they nearly did the double, which was believed inconceivable at the time. And these triumphs were under Herbert Chapman. And then they really got underway, full steam ahead. They won the championship, and then were halfway towards winning it again when Chapman died in 1934. George Allison arrived. He was a director, was made manager, to steady the boat and keep them on course. They won the championship that year, and then again in the following season, despite the increasing competition against Arsenal.
I'm here today with the Arsenal football team, and in a moment you'll see just what a fine lot of fellows they are. We're all looking forward most eagerly and in the keenest anticipation to the forthcoming season. As league champions, we have a very high standard of football to maintain, and I sincerely hope and trust and believe we will maintain it.
One of the young players signed at the age of 14 who became a professional in 1935 was Dennis Compton.
It was fairly simple for me because I'd been 3 years on the ground staff and everybody knew me. And then when I became of age, as you might say, 17, I was called in by George Allison, and he said, "We want you to turn professional for us. And you want to?" And I said, "I do, sir. And your mother and father are for it?" I said, "Yes, sir, that's right." I just signed my name, and that was it.
In 1932, the Arsenal Football Club had paid £45,000 to build the luxurious West Stand, opened by the Prince of Wales in December of that year. And in 1935, the club had erected a cover over the North Terraces, which was to be destroyed by firebombs during the war. In 1936, the East Stand was demolished to make way for an even more splendid stand, complete with commentary box and new offices. But the club had incurred a debt of £200,000 to pay for all these improvements, which meant that a gate of at least 40,000 was needed for each home game.
The East Stand went up, was rebuilt in 1936. This was going to be the last word in, well, it was at the time, the last word in